Welcome, everybody. Let me ask you a question. Has the Russian bear been awakened? Has Russia been, is the Ezekiel 38 war on the verge of taking place? Last week we did a program about Ezekiel 38 and the Gog and Magog War. We've got Dr. Hiltibidal's DVD here, very exciting stuff. And we're going to talk about that again this week. I've got a whole list of some more questions to for Dr. Hiltibidal. He's sitting right here. And don't miss the program. Get you some popcorn, get you some sweet tea, and get ready, because we're going to begin in just a moment. Hey, welcome everybody. Here we are again, Brother Dan Goodwin and Dr. Charles Hiltibidal, Prophecy in the Spotlight. You can find us at prophecyinthespotlight.com, just like it says right there. And everything's there, the YouTube channel, the Rumble channel, all of our TV programs are right there on YouTube for you. And you should subscribe to that channel. You'll get alerts. You'll know when we post a video. Because there are other videos on there that are not on television, and you're missing a lot if you're not on YouTube. And the Facebook page is there, Prophecy in the Spotlight Facebook page. We got 7,000 or 8,000 people there, I believe, Doc. And so there's a lot going on. I do live streams on Facebook that you don't see if you're a TV watcher. So you need to spread your wings a little bit and find out the other places where you can get us. Doc, the DVD is awesome, and we did a show last week. Had a good time. I think people understood some things.
I hope so.
We're going to go a little further. I'm just going to read, she's going to put the reference up there, Ezekiel 38, 1 through 4. You can read these later. I'm just going to read one part of a verse here. Verse 2, Son of man, set thy face against Gog and the land of Magog. Mm-hmm. This is the beginning of Ezekiel 38 and chapter 39.
Yes,
what
they go
we
together.
understand is the Russian invasion coming down to the Golan Heights, basically, right. The mountains of the Lord, mm-hmm. And going to attack Israel, try to destroy them, take their land, and God is going to miraculously, through probably human instruments, end that. Mm-hmm. And so this is a prophecy. And this is a prophecy that you and I believe is going to happen right around the rapture. And we can't be sure about that, but
certainly imminent, it appears.
Yeah, and it could happen a year before the rapture. We don't know, but certainly looks like it could even be a rapture thing.
It's very
that the rapture could be involved in that. Mm-hmm. And we gave some reasons in last week's program. So I want to go a little further. We only got about halfway through my notes here for. That I wrote down while I listened to your video here. And so the first question I want to ask you is this, and this was my introduction today. According to you, Doc, do you believe the bear has been awakened?
Oh, yes. Yes, Russia. Of course, we have an eagle for a symbol for our nation, and various nations have their thing. But England, a lion, and all of this. But the bear is always associated with them, and so that's why we talk about that. But yes,
and we call it the bear.
They're wide awake and they're on a rampage.
The bear from the north, it's called.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize, if you go look at a globe, we got a globe right there. If you go look at an atlas or a map, mm-hmm. They're right above Israel. Now, there's a lot of miles there, but they're right directly above Israel.
That's the thing about prophecy. It doesn't originate or revolve around America.
That's right.
If you're going to understand north, south, and east and west, you got to go to Jerusalem and look north, south, and east and west.
Exactly right. Exactly right. All right. So I had some other things here we didn't get to that I want to get to today. You mentioned on the DVD there have been 3 attempts in Bible prophecy to destroy Israel, or there will be.
Well, there will yet be, and they have been. Well, we have historically, in 1948, when they decided, told the world they were a nation again, or a sovereign state. There was a war against them. 5 nations come try to destroy them. Well, it didn't work out.
Nope.
Then again in '68, and then in '74, and there are continually battles taking place. But I believe there's probably Psalms 83 does appear. If it is a battle, and I know it's called an appreciatory psalm, but it appears to be a battle that, if it is, it's never happened historically. And if you take those names, ancient names, put them with their geography over geography today, you realize that it is every nation that borders Israel today. And if you put that with the fig tree prophecy, Luke talks about when the fig tree shoots forth its branch, and all of the trees. Trees are always used symbolically of nations. It would appear that these nations, within about a 7-year period of time, along with Israel, all came into their name and geography as they are today, and it matches what Psalms 83 talks about. And these are the areas right now that are sending rockets over into Israel, and Israel is retaliating. It could be that Psalms 83 war. Then Isaiah 17 talks about that. You have the mention in Jeremiah chapter 49 of things having to do with what's modern day Jordan, as well as Lebanon. Syria or Damascus has prophecy against it. And then there's going to be the battle that we're discussing today, the ultimate battle of trying to destroy Israel before, I believe, the tribulation. And we know Israel is going to be in the tribulation because the whole purpose is to purify a nation for the millennial reign.
Let's get Mr. Putin on the phone right now, and let's help him understand that, that the Bible says that Israel's not going to be defeated. And by the way, Mr. Putin, you're going to lose that battle.
You're going to lose it.
Is he watching our program today up there in Moscow?
1/6 of the army is all that's going to let be. Can you imagine 20% is all that's going to survive? And Israel's going to come out fairly unscathed because it appears God, either supernaturally or in whatever means God's choosing, is going to bring a great defeat to this confederated army that's coming.
Well, I'm getting out of order, but you mentioned something that triggered my memory. It's on my next page here. If I can find it. The hailstorm.
Yeah.
You said not only is it the army that gets, a lot of them die, but you said, but also upon their countries.
In chapter 39, which, by the way, gives extra information with this battle, it does appear that not only is this judgment of the hailstones of fire and brimstone, not just destroy them, but it's going to come upon their nations.
And I wrote down here, and I think this was part of it. You got to bear with me because I wrote this stuff down while the video's playing, and I wrote down under that not only he takes out their countries, not just the leader or not just the army, but the nations themselves are going to suffer some destruction. And then I wrote this down. You must have mentioned the destruction of radical Islam.
Yes, I'm convinced, and this is probably, or at least a great possibility, that what we know of as radical Islam today will be defeated. That doesn't mean Islam itself is defeated, because it's no doubt a part. But you need to understand that the false religion that's being developed right now between quote-unquote Christian leaders and Islamic leaders are not the radical Islamists.
Right.
They're the moderate. And if you remove the radical Islam, how simple would it be for Islam that is left with the more moderate thinkers, with the watered-down version of quote-unquote Christianity, to have that end-time religion for? I can see this all happening easily with this war.
Now you said this: the Ukraine is coming back under Russia, and it's prophetic.
Not all of Ukraine. You got to understand, I give you some maps that you can see in the DVD, in PowerPoints. Magog is the people group. You got to go all the way back to the 10th chapter of Genesis where you get the table of nations. Magog is one of the descendants of Japheth. And Magog spread all the way across from China all the way to the Dnieper River, we call it, which is the eastern part of Ukraine. And already Russia has taken Crimea a few years ago, and they now have these districts that once were Russian. They're Russian-speaking people back again. Because I'm convinced that prophecy, when it was given to a people group living in their geography. And it'll be fulfilled with that people group in that geography.
Yeah, I've heard you say it many times. That's very interesting.
Russia is nothing but the Magog people, along with all of the nations that end with Stan, are also Magog people, or descendants from Magog.
Now, I don't know where I wrote this down, but I'll ask it anyway. A lot of people are confused they confuse this war with Armageddon.
Uh-huh.
And they're not the same.
No, they're not the same at all. In the DVD, I show the places where these two battles completely different. One, the Battle of Armageddon is in the Valley of Jezreel, or Megiddo Valley. This battle's on the mountains of the north. The Armageddon is all the nation basically of the world gathering there.
In a place called Megiddo.
In Megiddo. It's actually it's Jezreel's Valley. But anyway, but here is a specific set of names. And these specific set of names are different than the set of names in Isaiah or Psalms 83 that we spoke of a moment ago. So, no, they are not the same. They're at least 7 years apart.
Yeah, yeah, and it could be exactly 7 years.
It could be, but they're at least that much apart, and they are by no means the same. They may have some of the same people. And people get this confused then when you get to chapter number 20 of the book of Revelation. The final war that's going to take place when the devil's let loose for a season has the same names. But you need to understand, people don't ever forget their history.
Now let's just hit this one more time to make sure people got this. And I wrote this down while listening. There's a difference in the mountains of the north and Armageddon or Megiddo.
Oh, yes.
Big difference. Different place.
The mountains of the north are what's called the Golan Heights today.
Yeah.
And the Golan Heights are providing, people have, we live in America here, and from where we are, it's a 6-hour drive to 5.5-hour drive to Chicago. Or it's a 10 or 11-hour drive from here to Dallas. Well, in the Middle East, it's only 85 miles from Jerusalem to Damascus. And it's less to Amman, Jordan. And so everything there is relatively close together.
Yeah.
And so what they can do is they can fly out over Haifa, and they can come back in through the valleys between the mountains of the north, the Golan Heights. They can pop out in Syria, being totally undetected, and drop their ordinances and come back to safety. The Golan Heights, that's why President Trump declared the Golan Heights belong to Israel. And again, that's another sign that Israel is still underneath the thumbprint of Gentile rule.
Okay, well, Doc, we're going to get into what I think is some of the most interesting questions I have for you here that I think folks are going to like. But real quickly, let's just thank the audience for their financial support, the partners out there who keep us on the air. We are viewer supported completely. We have no sponsors, so the gifts of God's people are how we stay on the air here.
Amen.
And we appreciate every one of you. And of course, in about another month or so, that bill comes due again. And we appreciate everybody that writes a check or donates on the website. Some of you even do the automatic monthly thing. You can do that also at the website. And so we're coming up on that pretty close. We're about halfway through the quarter, or maybe a little more, and those bills will be coming due again, so we appreciate it if you'd pray about that and do what you can. And my hair gets whiter every time it gets close to the end. And anyway, by the way, we want you to know that Doc and I are both preachers. We both travel. I just got back. He mentioned Dallas. I was just down there. I just preached in Kilgore, Texas. And he and I both travel. And Doc has cut his down a little bit because he's not quite as young as he used to be. But we are both available to talk with you about doing something at your church. Just contact us. Let us know. We'd love to talk to you about possibly doing something in your area. And all right. And we have one other need that we mentioned last week. We want to mention it again. I don't, since these are taped in advance, we don't know where we stand on this, but we have a roof problem here in the studio, and we have to put a new roof. It's $15,000. I don't know where we stand on that now. We may be halfway. I'm not sure. By the time this airs, if you'd like to help with that, she's got that up on the screen right now. Don't write a check to Prophecy in the Spotlight. Don't write it to Dan Goodwin. If you do, I'm going out and buy a new car or some groceries or go to take a trip to Hawaii. But no, if you're going to give to the roof thing, it needs to be on Doc's website. You see it right there. The address is there if you want to write a check. And if you don't get that, and you just call the 800 number, my daughter, the ladies will give you the information how you can get the money to the roof thing, and appreciate that very much. Okay, let's jump back into this, Doc, because this is some exciting stuff that I want to make sure we get in here. The Bible talks about the horses coming in Russia. They're coming. The army is coming on horseback. It talks about. I want to ask you a question here. Are the Russians really coming on horses?
You know, I remember years ago, maybe 30 years ago, people talking about, the buildup of horses in Russia and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And what people need to understand is that prophecy is written using terminology that every era of time would have a general understanding of concerning implements or instruments of war.
Yeah.
Even today, we don't use sling stones, but everybody understands that a sling stone was used in battle. And today, we don't use bow and arrows. But everybody, even today, understands a bow and arrow is an instrument that can be used in warfare. No, they're not coming riding on their horses. It's a term that everybody would have understood. It's a mobilization of your army.
Yeah.
Today, can you imagine Ezekiel saying, now there's a day coming when an airplane is going to be able to fly twice the sound of speed and deliver. Nobody would have had an idea. You're crazy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But everybody has always read it and understood this is having to do with the mobilization and implements of war. But we don't use those kind anymore.
Yeah, and I agree with you 1,000%. I just listened to somebody recently talking about this. And they took the other view, though. Of course, yes, the terrain is so bad up there, they're going to use them horses to get around, and I just couldn't believe what I heard.
No, there's not. No, folks, listen. Prophecy is written. Terms that are used, they need to get our book, I guess, on terms of prophecy. But just like trees are symbolic of nations. Well, so you're going to read that portion about the fig tree and all of the trees, and you're going to say, well, that's literal. No, it's prophecy written like a parable, using something literal to explain something literal.
Yeah.
And so, no, I don't believe they're bringing their horses.
No, and of course, she's trying to find it there to put it out. But this is the Bible terminology, Bible prophecy terminology. Doc and I wrote this together. This would be a great book to have on your bookshelf and in your office, and good to give as a gift to your preacher. And
I gave 5 of them away to the 5 missionaries that were at our missions conference this week.
right, there it is. She's got it up now. and I hate to say this because I'm part. I wrote half of it, but this is a good.
Oh, they
book.
were very appreciative. One of them skimmed through and said, "Oh man, this is going to help me in teaching."
Oh, he must have found the parts that I wrote. And, I just opened it up. The Seven Sealed Book, Evangelist. This was a piece that I wrote, and the Seven Sealed Book. I didn't learn that in Bible college.
It's a good book to help people with both. I'm discovering that a lot of our preachers are very appreciative of it.
The Judgment Seat, Charles Hiltibidal. The Third Temple, Dan Goodwin. The Marriage Supper of the Lamb, Dr. Charles Hiltibidal. That's how it's set up. It's we kind of tried to split it up half and half. In the book, the stuff that I didn't know, I gave to him. So, all right. Well, quickly here,
He's
Doc.
not joking, folks.
And real quickly here, along the same line, the Bible talks about in that battle, the blood will be up to the horses' bridles.
Yes. If you've looked at a picture, and I have a picture in the DVD of the Megiddo Valley, or in the Old Testament it's called the Valley of Jezreel, you'd just about have to have the blood of 8 billion people in order to fill that whole place up to that depth. It's, I think, symbolic of the fact of the catastrophic devastation.
Yeah.
That's Armageddon.
And the point is, that verse helps prove your point that they're not coming on horses. It's symbolic.
Yes.
And I don't know, I'm not a mathematician, but I don't think there's enough blood in the entire world to fill
that entire valley to be that deep. And so,
if they did, there'd be nobody alive because everybody's blood would be in there. I just don't think I think that's symbolic.
Again, it's types and figures. By the way, the book of Revelation, verse number 1 tells you it's going to be understood by signs and symbols. Signification, or signified, means to make known by signs and symbols.
Well, quickly, because I want to get to these. The Great Wall of China, I had never heard that before. You had some insight on that.
Well, the reason why, Chinese history will tell you, they built the Great Wall of China to keep the Magogs out.
Which is what we call today the Russians.
And if you know anything about, everybody probably has heard the name Kublai Khan, and these warriors, Mongols, they're all descendants of Magog. And so they moved all the way, they had in the 6th century BC, all the way from that area of China all the way into modern day Ukraine was the territory of the Magogs. And they were not the only kingdom. Matter of fact, they were as large or larger kingdom than the Roman kingdom, just in a different position. There were 5 major kingdoms all going at the same time in 6th century BC. Most people don't know the difference between world history and Bible history.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got to have a little world history to understand.
And you have pointed that out, and I think you've helped me with that. In Daniel, when it talks about the 5 kingdoms of the world, the 4, and then the revived
well, that's
one, that's revolving around Israel.
To God's people, to children, born again people, and Bible students, we really only consider the 4 major kingdoms. From the head of silver all the way down, as if we think those were the only kingdoms that existed.
Right.
But there were many kingdoms that existed outside of those 4. The reason why they're important is because they are the ones representative of trampling Jerusalem under their feet.
Yep, under the foot of men. And,
yes.
They're going to answer for that one day. All right, well, let's hurry this because this is interesting too. I want you to talk about the passage in Ezekiel 39:11 that talks about unwalled villages, because there's a lot of misunderstanding there.
Well, I've been in Israel several times, and you've been in Israel. Many of our people, no doubt, watching us have been to Israel. How many walled villages did you see?
None.
Now, you might have went through some checkpoints if you went to certain places.
Yeah, Bethlehem, yep.
Yeah, which, by the way, is not really Bethlehem. But anyway, that's for another story. But how many cities in America is walled villages? You name me a country with walled villages. What he's simply saying is you can understand that this is a prophecy that's going to be fulfilled in a time when people are not living in walled villages. So this prophecy could not have been fulfilled. Number one, almost 2,700 years, Russia and Iran, or Bible Persia, never had any political agreement together. And there were walled villages until more recent history.
Yeah.
So walled villages is simply giving us an indication. We're living in a time when there are no walled villages. This is something that's going to take place. It's kind of like you'll find other terms say in the latter days.
Yeah. Okay, we got a couple minutes left, Doc. I want to bring this back down to where we live and where our audience lives. Mm-hmm. I want to ask the question that they have right now out there in TV land. What does Ezekiel 38 and all this stuff we're talking about, Ukraine, and what does this have to do with the person sitting in their living room today? What does this mean?
Okay. Number one, I think it's telling you that the major kingdoms, the king of the north, the east, the south, and the west, are all formulating into their position for leadership, moving into the tribulation period. Secondly, I think it's telling us how much closer we're going to be to this digital currency that we've been talking about, and all of the things for a one world order. Because what's going to happen is you're seeing these groups align themselves, this group align themselves, and somewhere they're going to have to meet and come who's going to be in charge. It tells us we are getting very near the end of the church age. And as God's people, we need to do, number one, we need to do everything we can to at least get our loved ones saved.
Yeah.
And we ought to try to share the gospel as many people as we can. Number three, I think we ought to be investing the material things that God gives us, not to store them up for ourselves, but into the kingdom of God, to try to advance the movement of God for the reaching of souls while we still can.
Yeah. That's very well said, Doc. I agree 100%. Well, folks, we're coming down to the last minute of the program. These have been some sobering things this week and last week about the Ezekiel 38 war. It isn't that it might happen, it is going to happen. Prophecy is history told in advance. This God told us what he saw in the future happening. It will happen, cannot be changed. The question is, friend, what are you going to do about it? Where are you going to go when you die? This thing's all coming to an end. The rapture's coming, judgment's coming. Are you saved? Are you born again? Do you remember a time in your life when you realized you was lost and on your way to hell? Do you remember a time in your life when you got on your face or on your knees or you bowed your head and you trusted Jesus as your Savior? I hope you've made that decision. I hope you're a child of God today. I hope you're in the kingdom, and I hope you're ready for Jesus to come back for us, because he's coming. And he's coming soon. Ready or not, here I come. And if you need any help with this, contact us. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to help you with this. Well, until next time, keep your eyes on them skies.